Clint, this is a film that you considered doing, as I understand it, 4 years ago. Um, you ended up deciding not to at that time. You went on to make Sully and the 1517 to Paris and The Mule. Why was this year feeling like the best time for you to make this, and what was it about this story that most intrigued you?
Well, I didn't. We had a little trouble putting the deal together
Oh,
the first time 4 years ago, and then it sort of fell apart, and everybody went their separate ways. It was with another studio, Fox, and then it was going to be at Fox Warner's, and then it was going to be this or that, and finally the whole thing collapsed, and then just all of a sudden it kept haunting me, the story, and the screenplay was good, and I wanted to do it, but and then Disney bought Fox, and then Fox bought somebody else, and then Warner Brothers came. So all of a sudden it fell back in my lap, and so it came together rather fast.
why do you think it did continue to haunt you for many years?
It just seemed like it's such a stories of injustice are always dramatic, and this one seemed like such injustice, and such in some of our favorite institutions did wrong or jumped to conclusions, and so it was. Whenever you get that kind of conflict, it makes for a good drama.
Paul, you were 9 years old when the Atlanta Olympics were taking place. Do you have any recollection of that time and this whole story? Was it not something that factored in? Was it a guy that you had remembered and followed over the years?
I really didn't know much about it for that very reason, the fact that I was so young. But also, it's one of those things that even if you heard his name, you just assumed a negative connotation. You didn't really know what the deal was unless you became very investigatory on the matter. Reading Billy Ray's screenplay was very illuminating. And then when I went to fact check stuff, I was like, oh my goodness, they really brought him in. Oh my goodness, they tried to. It just seems so offensive to how they treated him, as if he had no concept of the idea of how they were trying to trick him and just do these sly sort of tactics that were just, as I put it, I think really offensive to someone else in law enforcement.
What was the process for you to get this role?
So the story goes, I was in Thailand doing a movie with my buddy Spike Lee, and I got a call saying Clint Eastwood wants you to be one of the leads of his new film, and I thought, well, that doesn't sound right. And then it got goofier when I found out he just saw a picture of me. Jeff McClatt and Tim Moore, and I believe Jessica Meyer printed out a photo of me next to Richard Jewell's face, and the boss looked at it and had an instinct and kind of was immediately kind of at least self-sold. I think he had to sell some other people on the idea. I think he's still selling people on the idea. But the reality is such. He's brilliant, and when he has an instinct, he goes for it, and I'm very glad I was the recipient of that.
Did you want to see any tape on this guy? Did you want to go back and watch Black
Well,
Klansman?
I just wanted to do his wardrobe, but it,
You had seen I, Tonya and Black Klansman. Yeah.
I had seen him on Ion.
The Tanya Harding film.
Tanya Harding, yes, the Tanya Harding film. I saw that, and I saw him in a couple of the films. He looked exactly like Richard Jewell. I mean, like his twin brother, and so that was a good start. And then you think, well, it couldn't be that he really can act also. And then it turned out that he was he exceeded all expectation
Absolutely.
for
Yes.
me.
Kathy, as we saw, Bobby Jewell was a consultant on the film. She was involved. I assume you guys had numerous conversations. What did she want to impart to you, and what were her priorities in talking to you?
It was my birthday. She baked me a pound cake, and she told me the entire recipe for a pound cake, and we spent a few hours talking, and she's still very emotional about it, and I remember her. I said, "Bobby, I just I don't want to fail you. I want to." And she's teeny weeny, and she just said, "Just be me." And I thought, whoa, okay, I'll do my best. But truthfully, the more I learned about her relationship with her son, and there's a book called The Suspect that's out by Kent Alexander and Kevin Solwyn. Kent was a U.S. attorney at the time there, and Kevin was a Wall Street Journal, and they've been researching all of this, and they sent me a chapter about Bobby, and I learned that he was her only child, her only son, that she'd had a couple of miscarriages, and so that was a real clue to their tight relationship, and also they were very active in their church, and so I learned a lot about their background and what kind of kid he was, and that he wanted to help people from the very beginning. He was 9 years old. He ran around church making sure everybody had their programs, and we talked a lot about his deathmobile and.
Yeah, his vehicle was insane. He just had every possible contingency plan in his cop car. So everything from a black light to a slingshot to I mean,
130-pound battering ram.
it looked more like Dennis the Menace's little wagon probably than a grown up vehicle. But yeah, no, they're both such characters. I mean, I think that is fun to play them.
And he had Beanie Babies.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell a really really quick story. I'll abbreviate it. Richard had such a big heart. It's ridiculous. He had Beanie Babies and little teddy bears and stuff that he would stuff into his glove compartment so that if he were to show up on the scene of a traffic incident or worse involving a child, he wanted something there to distract the kid or make them feel better. And, they don't teach that in the academy. That's just Richard Jewell.
And I just want to add one more thing. I know you're going to talk to Sam.
Maybe not.
I have to.
It's the cherry on top. But there's one anecdote that really, slammed me when we were actually coming back from our tour in New York and everything, was that one of the stories that they wrote about Richard, a guy who was a very well-known sports writer named Dave Kindred, compared Richard to Wayne Williams, the serial killer in Atlanta. This was during the first week, and he walked it back in the Atlantic a while later, but just gives you an idea of the kind of awful things that were happening to him.
Sam, our
Yes, Kathy.
our introduction to Watson Bryant in the film, the first few minutes of the film, is so memorable, to say the least. What was your reaction when you were reading Billy Ray's script for the first time and reading those first couple of pages?
It was I was just blown away by the script. It was a great script, and Watson. When I met I talked to him on the phone, and then I got off the plane in Atlanta. I hit the ground running and went straight to his office and interviewed him and Nadia and had him tape record my lines. And I thought I'd be there for 2 or 3 hours, and I was there for 7 hours. And he was like, "I wouldn't say that," and "No, that's not how it happened," And I said, "Well, we're taking a little poetic license, but give me whatever ad libs you got, And he would throw in some ad libs, and then he is that guy. I mean, he's this guy. He's out of a Tennessee Williams play, and has this thing with authority. Billy Ray told me a story that he was driving with him to get to dinner to go to dinner when he first met him, and he got pulled over by a cop for his taillight or something, and he got in an argument with the cop, and said, "You're abusing your authority and everything," And that's the kind of guy Watson is.
Kathy, from your perspective, the press conference scene is just so powerful and beautifully acted on your part. Is that a different? Yes. Is that a different day for you as an actor on the set when you have a scene that requires what that scene requires, or in your mind, is it all just in a day's work? Was the preparation at all different that morning?
The preparation was long before that. I studied a lot the footage, and we even added the introduction that I saw that I thought was so important, that I thought was so brilliant, that Watson said the 113th victim, because she was a victim of all of this, and so we added that, and couldn't use the whole speech, obviously, but so I worked on that a lot, and on those kinds of days, you have to kind of sit in the corner and because we had to do the scene in the kitchen after that. You have to keep the pot on the stove, so to speak. And those days are difficult, but it's an honor to be asked to do something like that. And I think one of the main things that we wanted to do with this film was make Bobby happy. And when we were at Atlanta, seeing her waltz up and down that red carpet and beaming up at Clint, it was pretty great.
Kathy had told me that she had conferred with Bobby Jewell, and that she assured me that the speech that she had was the exact wording of the that Bobby had given her, and I'm fond of shooting rehearsals anyway. I like it's one of my idiosyncrasies. It drives some people crazy, but it's always fun to see what happens when things happen for the first time. When it comes over your face the first time, and that was her first take. She did that, and it was just perfect the first time. I was dumbfounded, and so. That's kind of the luck we had on this. And when you have people like Kathy who are soldiers and can fight.
Now I can die happy.
Sam, we've all heard these kind of legendary stories of how fast Clint as a director works. Did it take any adjustment for you and the other members of the cast?
No, we all just came in there loaded for bear. You know, we came in ready to go because we'd heard the stories. But actually, there's no rushing on the set with Clint. It's actually a really smooth. You don't feel rushed at all. And I kept saying to Paul, it's kind of like shooting. It felt like shooting an indie. It was incredibly actor friendly because Clint is such a horse whisperer with actors. You know, he's really. It's ironic that his image of this sort of the John Wayne image, he's actually this very compassionate, sensitive actor's director, and he's incredibly intuitive and sensitive with actors. You know,
Clint Eastwood,
Thank
Paul
you.
Walter-Hauser, Kathy Bates, and Sam Rockwell. Thank you so much and congratulations.